Hi, my name is Caitlin Orr, and I'm here to present my mini lesson for our signature assignment. I'm working with Lisa on the project, and we have chosen Faith Ringgold as our author. The book we chose for this mini lesson is titled Aunt Harriet's Underground Railroad in the Sky by Faith Ringgold. This book is a story of a young girl, Cassie, and her brother, Bebe, learning about and experiencing the Underground Railroad through an imaginary journey through the sky. They see a train while on their journey and meet the conductor, Aunt Harriet, who tells them all about the Underground Railroad and what life was like for slaves escaping the South. When Bebe hops on the train and leaves Cassie behind, she travels the railroad looking for him and experiences the life of a fugitive slave firsthand. They are reunited in the end and celebrate the anniversary of Harriet Tubman's first flight to freedom. And that summary was taken off a site called Book Club Blog and blogspot.com. We have three main objectives for this mini lesson, but the most important one, and the one that's focused on the most, is that students will be able to create predictions before and during reading that are supported by background knowledge and or story clues in order to improve reading comprehension. We would also like students to reflect upon their learning and understanding of the objectives through a learning log. And finally, they should be able to explain who Harriet Tubman was, what her accomplishments are, and why she was important to society, and they would do this through the reading of the book. By the end of the lesson, students will understand that making sensible predictions while reading will help them stay more active in their reading. In turn, they will be able to better understand what they read. Through engaging in this picture book, students will not only improve their ability to comprehend what they read, but they will also learn more about Harriet Tubman and how she helped people achieve freedom from slavery. This lesson, which is for a third grade class, is written with the understanding that our students have had prior lessons and instruction in regard to Harriet Tubman and her fight for freedom during the time period of slavery. Since this was only meant to be a mini lesson, we could not include this direct instruction in the lesson. To begin the lesson, the teacher will explain that the purpose of today's lesson is to help make it easier to comprehend or understand what we read by making predictions. We both feel that it's important that the teacher states the purpose of the lesson at the beginning so that students understand what they're going to be learning about, and that can help them stay focused during the lesson. The teacher will ask students to turn and talk to each other about what it means to make a prediction while reading. This gives them time to talk to each other. If one person doesn't have any prior knowledge of this strategy, hopefully their partner will be able to help them out a little bit before the lesson starts. Next, students will share their responses briefly with the class. The teacher will then provide direct instruction by explaining that, and this would be in quotations to give you an idea of what the teacher might say, making predictions or making an educated guess about what will happen next in the story helps us to stay involved in what we read. By doing so, we can then better understand what we are reading. Today, I'm going to model or show you what it looks like to make predictions when we read. I'm going to use a wonderful story called Aunt Harriet's Underground Railroad in the Sky by Faith Ringgold in order to show you what I mean. The book will be scanned and projected onto the smartboard through the use of a PowerPoint. I've done this many times this year now that I've had a smartboard, and it really works well. You can just turn the pages through the PowerPoint. It keeps the kids' attention a lot better than just using the book itself. It's pretty easy to scan the pages in, and then it's it could also be more hands-on. You can call kids up to turn the pages and things like that. So basically this would be more engaging and provide a better visual for those specific students. On the whiteboard near the smartboard, the teacher will create a chart that is set up in 3 sections. The first section will say prediction. The second section will say why, while the last part will say were you right? So it will look something like this. Prediction chart, my prediction, why, and give support, which would be the background knowledge and the story clues, and then were you right? Eventually, as they're reading, the kids would check themselves and to see if their predictions were correct or not. The teacher will briefly explain the chart, and then he or she will begin reading the book. The teacher will ask students to look at the cover, basically focusing on the title and the pictures, in order to make some guesses about what the book might be about. Once they are done sharing, we'll begin reading the book. While the teacher is reading, they will stop at certain points in the story to model how to make predictions. While the teacher is modeling, he or she will be thinking aloud and explaining each part of the chart that they are filling in, which would be up on the board. The teacher will stress to the students that predictions must be supported with background knowledge and or story clues, which will be clearly explained through the modeling. While modeling is taking place, student discussion will also be prompted concerning Harriet Tubman, her accomplishments, and why it's important for us to read this book and to learn about her, and why Faith Ringgold even wrote this book about her. After modeling 2 to 3 examples of predictions from the story, students will be asked to work together in pairs to continue the practice of making predictions. So I'm going to stop there and just kind of show you what I would mean. So I won't do all 3, but so after we made predictions about the cover, one day my baby brother BB and I were flying among the stars, way, way up, so far up in the mountains. So far up, the mountains looked like pieces of rock candy, and the oceans like tiny cups of tea. We came across an old ramshackle train in the sky. A tiny woman in a conductor's uniform appeared on the steps of the train and announced the schedule. All aboard! All aboard! Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Niagara Falls, Canada. All aboard! All aboard! Hundreds of bedraggled men, women, and children filled the sky and boarded the dusty old wooden train. No one spoke. It was like watching a silent movie. "Come on, Cassie," BB said, jumping up on the train. "Let's take a ride." So this is the first point in the story where I would stop and fill in the chart that I've showed you for the students. I would explicitly model my prediction, which what I would say is something along the lines of, I'm predicting that the woman in the picture here is Harriet Tubman. And I would write my prediction, and then in the next column I would explain why. I use my background knowledge. I've learned about Harriet Tubman in the past. I've seen pictures of her, and this picture does look like her. It reminds me of her. I also used the title, Aunt Harriet, made me think of this. I know that she has a lot to do with these states and helping people in these states. Any kind of background knowledge that I could pull about Harriet Tubman is what I would use to support this, okay? So that would be explicitly modeled. I would explain my thought process to the students. Then we would continue reading. And then eventually, in the next few pages, it ends up telling you that it is Harriet Tubman. She says, "Hello, Cassie, I am Harriet Tubman. People call me Aunt Harriet because I take care of them." And at that point, I would go back to the chart and fill in the last column. Yes, I was right. My prediction was correct. Okay? Just to model all 3 parts of the chart. And I would do this 2 to 3 times before I let the students go back to their seats and try it with their partner. Once students go back to their seats, they will receive the same chart at their desks that was used by the teacher during modeling. The teacher will continue to read the book out loud, but he or she will ask the students to stop at certain points and make predictions with their partner. So the points will be predetermined for the students so that they can have good parts of the story where there is a feasible prediction to be made. Just so it's because it's their first time engaging in something like this. The first 2 columns of the chart must be filled in. Before we continue reading, the teacher will ask some of the pairs to share their predictions. As we read, we will stop and fill in the reflection part of the chart as well. So as we continue reading, they can fill in this part. Once students are done working in pairs for 2 predictions, and we have completed the book, we will move on to the final part of the lesson. Independently, students will be given a very short excerpt to read. The excerpts will be differentiated according to the reading levels in the class. So I basically did it, since it was a 3rd grade class, I did a 2nd grade, a 3rd grade, and a 4th grade to represent on grade level, above grade level, and below grade level. It could be modified if I had more information about the actual students. So I just printed out what we would use. This will be a shorter, simpler excerpt for the 2nd grade, a little more complicated for 3rd, and then the 4th grade continues to get harder. So students will be given a selection depending upon their reading level. Students will need to read the very short piece on their own and then fill in the graphic organizer, which they've already been using, to make a prediction about what could happen next after this excerpt. They must fill in the prediction and why. They can't fill in the last part for this one. These will be collected and used as a form of assessment. The lesson will take about 20 to 25 minutes depending upon the student interactions and discussions that take place throughout the lesson. We've also included an extension activity / homework assignment. The first part was, in order for students to reflect upon their learning, they will complete a learning log, which looks like this. The learning log will ask them to reflect upon what they learned in this lesson and why it is important. Students will be permitted to include drawings as part of their learning log as well if that is a modification that they need. This will be completed for homework the night that the lesson was taught in class. It will be collected the next day and used as a form of feedback for the teacher as well as for the students. So basically it says, what I learned about Harriet Tubman is. What I learned about making predictions is. Things I learned about are important because. Some questions I still have are. In order to make sure students continue to improve their reading strategies at home or during center time within the classroom, we found a great video on BrainPop Jr., which we wanted to include in the unit as well. Students would be asked to watch the video, which is titled Making Predictions, and then choose 2 of the accompanying activities that go with the topic. For example, there are activities for the students of all learning styles. Some of them ask the students to draw, play games, write, read selections and make predictions, engage with a word wall that highlights the vocab from the video, look at pictures and draw and write what they think will happen next and why, and also choose their own book and use a graphic organizer similar to the one that I made on the website to track their predictions. This is something they can continually work on in their reader's notebooks and use as a reference tool for later. Students will be asked to email their work to the teachers or print it out and allow us to look at it for review and feedback. So we just thought that was a great video to include in there because it's engaging. Some kids need that extra practice, and it also has so many different activities that I'm sure most students would find something in there that's going to grab their attention and keep them engaged. Throughout the lesson, students will demonstrate their understanding by engaging in class discussions, completing their partner work, working independently on their charts, as well as completing their learning log. While they are working on their partner work, the teacher will be walking around to monitor progress, listen in on their classroom discussions, and help the students if needed. In order to check their independent work, the teacher will be collecting their charts to see if their predictions made sense based upon the story clues. It's important that the charts are collected and looked at because not all students are going to get to share their predictions, so every student's work needs to be reviewed. For the learning log, the teacher will be reading to see how deeply students understood the lesson, if they understood the importance of what they learned, and to make note of the questions and things that students are wondering about so they can be addressed in future lessons. We will know that the lesson is successful if our students can make predictions that make sense and can be supported by story clues and/or background knowledge. I think that's really important. Any student can make a prediction about what's going to happen next, but it should make sense based upon what's being presented to them in the text and what they've already been experiencing in their lives and what they already know about. Also, we want them to be able to demonstrate their understanding of why making predictions is important through discussions as well as the learning log. This is something that would have to be built upon. I doubt that all students are going to understand why predictions are important through a 20-25 minute mini lesson, but it still should be stressed so that it can be a basis and a foundation for later lessons that would continue. Although it is not the main focus, we want students to be able to explain who Harriet Tubman is, what she achieved, and why it is important to learn about her. This will be achieved by a discussion that takes place while reading the book together. The level of success of this lesson will be based upon how engaged the students are during the lesson. If we find that these types of activities are not engaging, interesting, or effective for our particular group of students, then we will need to reflect and change our plan. So that was one of our mini lessons, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.